Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Faces and Heels, your podcast for professional wrestling here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and today is a sad day in professional wrestling to a lot of people as the wrestling community mourns the loss of the icon, the legend, the immortal Hulk Hogan, who passed away at the ripe young age of 71 years old. Yes, Hulk Hogan has moved on to the big wrestling ring in the sky. This was a episode that I'm gonna be honest with you, I was kind of on the fence with talking about it, but cooler minds prevailed because I had my opinions of of Hulk Hogan, and I'm torn because it's a situation where my love for professional wrestling, how I came to love it, and what got me to watch it as a youngster was Hulk Hogan. Him in his initial run in the WWF at the time, and that's what drew me to professional wrestling. His feuds with Andre the Giant, him teaming up with Mr. T, and the feud with Rowdy Roddy Piper, and the Mega Powers uniting, and things of that nature. That's what drew me to professional wrestling, and that's why I love professional wrestling to this day. And it is because of this man. And then there's the other half of me. It's the other half of me. You know that old expression, you shouldn't meet your heroes. And I never met Hulk Hogan personally, face to face. But that expression, it goes true when it comes to him, because as the older we got, as time passed on, we got to peel the layers back and know the real Hulk Hogan. And we found out that he's a racist, he's a liar, and he was everything else. And I grew to despise the man. So it was kind of hard to come to grips with this show. Like, should I even do the show? Should I even talk about Hulk Hogan after all that he said and did that came to light in the past, 20 years? And it's kind of disturbing. Well, not kind of, it's disturbing. And so how I fixed it in my mind, whether it's right or wrong, maybe you could tell me, but this is how I fixed it in my mind. I will always be a fan of Hulk Hogan. I can't take it away. I can't take away his iconic status as a professional wrestler, the things that he did in the ring, and the promos that he did, the epic heel turn that took place at WCW, and so on and so forth. I can't take away all of those iconic moments that we got to experience because of Hulk Hogan. But Terry Bollea, on the other hand, I can't stand him. I despise him as a human being. And so I'm just going to celebrate Hulk Hogan. Now, it's not to shy away from the person that he is outside of the ring, but I can't take away the fact of Hulk Hogan being one of, if not the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. As much as it pains me to say, you can't take away what that man did in the ring and for the professional wrestling business. It is iconic, man. We wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't be experiencing the joy of WWE and AEW and TNA and New Japan and all this other good stuff. I don't think this would be around if Hulk Hogan was not the iconic figure that he was in the 80s, where professional wrestling just took off globally. It wasn't just a territorial thing. It became global, and it was global because of Hulk Hogan. It's similar to the NBA for you basketball fans. The NBA was a good league, a good product until Michael Jordan came along. And Michael Jordan just took the NBA to a whole nother stratosphere. It became a global phenomenon because of Michael Jordan. And so Hulk Hogan is, I guess you could say, the Michael Jordan of professional wrestling. Now, there are better wrestlers. You'll never hear me say on any any show, blog, whatever, that he's the greatest wrestler ever. No, he's not even a good one. He was never good in the ring. His in-ring work was not the greatest. He had 4 moves. 4. That's it. But what made Hulk Hogan special was the 4 moves that he made special. He was able to drag out a match that was so entertaining that you couldn't help but acknowledge the fact that he is the GOAT, you know. I think back to probably his greatest match, and this is just my humble opinion. Everybody has a different one. Some may say the match he had with Macho Man Randy Savage, or the match he had with Ric Flair back in the day. But my all-time favorite match, and I think is his greatest match, was the WrestleMania 18, I believe, with Hollywood Hulk Hogan versus The Rock. That was the greatest Hulk Hogan match I've ever seen. It probably one of the best WrestleMania matches I've ever seen. Not the best, but one of the best WrestleMania matches I ever seen. To see a double heel turn, or a double turn, I should say, take place right there on the spot in that moment, and for Hogan and The Rock to fully acknowledge the moment, the pop that crowd gave in Toronto for Hulk Hogan was epic, man. It's still to this day. That's one of the only matches I go back on YouTube and watch. And watch it in its entirety. Yeah, I love that match, and that's the only Hogan match I would go back and watch multiple times. It was just cinema, man. It was beautiful to watch that match. Today I decided we're gonna go through the history of Hulk Hogan and go through his career, and unfortunately we're gonna touch in on some of his life, some of Terry's shenanigans as well. But we're not gonna skimp on it. We're gonna talk about the man, you know, as he passed away, and it is sad. Now, you know, no matter how I feel about him personally, and you know the things that he stood for and whatnot, that I vehemently disagree with, I just I feel compelled to talk about him. So we're gonna talk about the immortal Hulk Hogan, who passed away today on July the 24th, just a couple of weeks shy of his 72nd birthday. He was born on August the 11th, 1953, in Augusta, Georgia, under the giving name of Terry Bollea. And Terry wanted to be a professional wrestler since the age of 16. Yeah, he began watching professional wrestling, then going to shows at his local sportatorium, and one day he got old, you know, used to have cards, baseball cards, football cards, and whatnot. I don't know if they still do, but I used to collect football cards, but that's besides the point. He had wrestling cards, and one of the cards he had was of superstar Billy Graham, and he fell in love with that physique. He fell in love with the way superstar Billy Graham looked, and he wanted to emulate that look. And so he started, you know, working out and doing everything he could to emulate that look. And so while he was doing that, he also dabbled in being a musician. He used to play the bass guitar for several local bands in his while he was in high school and whatnot, in community college. And so he was really deep into it, you know, to the point where 2 other local musicians around the area where he lived, they formed a band, Ruckus, back in 1976. And so they started doing gigs at local clubs and wherever they can get the gigs at. And all the while, during his spare time, Terry would work out at a local gym in Tampa Bay. And so he would lift and do all that good stuff. And many wrestlers from that area would go to that gym to work out. And they noticed old Terry, got to know him a little bit. And he told them that he's in a band. They're performing at such and such club. And so they'll come and see him at the club. So two of the individuals that would come would be the Briscoe brothers. I'm pretty sure a lot of people who were around for the Attitude Era of the WWF or WWE, you remember Jerry Briscoe. It was him and his brother. And so they would go see this band, and they looked at the bass guitar player, and they're like, hey, that dude looks good. He look like he can actually perform, let's see what he got. So they invited him to train at their wrestling school or whatever. And one thing led to another. The Briscoe brothers asked him to try out wrestling, and he agreed, being a big fan of it. So Terry, he quit the band, he began training, and the rest, as they say, is history. He started in one training session. I think it was his first one, if I read it right. He was in the ring with Hiro Matasaka, and he broke Terry Bollea's leg in the first training section. And so he had to do 10 weeks of rehab. And when he returned after the 10 weeks, he asked the Briscoes, like, look, I would do this, but I don't want to work with Hero. That's not happening. That's not happening. And so they agreed, and they had him work with other people in the promotion. And so while working for this small promotion, this is where he met Brutus the Beefcake, who became his lifelong friend. The two, as we all know, end up working together again in WWF for a good while. And I believe, did Brutus Beefcake end up going to WC? I think so. I think everybody ended up going to WCW at some point. But anywho's, around this time, he was trying to come up with a name for his character in the ring. And the big show on television around this era, late 70s, was, of course, The Incredible Hulk. And what it was, I believe Terry was on this local television show, the talk show or whatever it was, and Lou Ferrigno was on the show with him. And, Lou Ferrigno played the Hulk on that show. And he's looking at Lou Ferrigno, he's like, yeah, you playing the Hulk? Because Terry dwarfed him. He was bigger than him. Terry Bollea, he was 6'7", 295 pounds. He had the 24-inch biceps. And so he's like, I'm bigger than you. I deserve to be the Hulk. So that's where the name, the Hulk, came from. So he began going by the name Terry the Hulk Boulder. And he sometimes also wrestled under the name Sterling Golden, which I don't know where that came from. I guess because of the blonde hair. But whatever the case may be, Terry the Hulk Boulder was his real first official wrestling gimmick name. So we transport to December the 1st, 1971. I was actually born during this time, so now the world's starting to make sense to me. And so we got at least this part of his story. In December of 1979, Terry won the first professional wrestling championship, the NWA Southeastern Heavyweight Championship in the Northern Division. Remember, around this time there were territories. You didn't have just promotions. You didn't have just WWE, AEW, TNA, and so on and so forth. There were promotions all over, because down here was Mid-South, down here in the New Orleans area. But anyways, that title was only recognized in Alabama and Tennessee. It wasn't recognized anywhere else. But just a month later, January of 1980, he ended up dropping the title to Bob Armstrong. After that, he briefly wrestled in Georgia Championship Wrestling, that territory, and then he got the phone call that changed his life and millions of other lives around the world when former NWA World Champion Terry Funk introduced Terry to the WWF owner and promoter Vincent J. McMahon. Yes, the father, not Vinnie Mac. But he introduced him to Big Vince there, who was impressed with Terry's charisma and his physical prowess and whatnot. So McMahon wanted him to use an Irish name. So he gave him the last name Hogan. But he also wanted him to dye his hair red so he can go full Irish gimmick here. But around this time, and this was 1980, 1979, 1980, Terry told him, look, my hair is already falling out. I don't want to use dye. I'll be bald by the end of the year. So I'm just going to keep it blonde, and I'll be a blonde Irish. And there you had it, the birth of Hulk Hogan. So that's how we arrived at this name. So Terry wrestled his first match in WWE when he defeated Harry Valdez, what that was, November the 17th on Championship Wrestling. He made his first appearance at Madison Square Garden in December of 1979 when he defeated Ted DiBiase. And he defeated him not with the leg drop, but with a bear hug. That was his finishing move. That was his finishing move back in the day, and he beat Ted DiBiase. What made that interesting, after the match, Terry was so appreciative to Ted DiBiase, and he told him that, he owed him one. And he did end up repaying it years later. It took him some time, but years later when Ted DiBiase returned to WWF under the moniker The $1 Million Man, and he got that win back on Hulk Hogan. And so during this time, Hogan was still doing other promotions. He was still working with other promotions. This is before it was taboo now, the forbidden door or whatever. But he was working in New Japan. He did that for about 5 years, from 1980 to 1985. The American Wrestling Association from 1981 to 1983. And then he returned to the WWF in 1983. And that run lasted till 1993. And now, this go around, when he returned in 1983, he wasn't under the tutelage of Vincent J. McMahon. Now, it was Vincent K. McMahon. Now, this is the Vinnie Mac that we all know and love after he bought the company from his father in 1982, and he planned to expand the company, not just be a territory, but a nationwide promotion. And if we fast forward 40 years later, now it's global. Now it's universal. So you can say what you want about Vince. Vince had a vision, and look at it now. And he handpicked Hulk Hogan to be the company's centerpiece, due to his charisma and his recognition, name recognition, I should say. So that was a good choice to kind of put the company on Hulk Hogan's back at the time. So Hogan, he returned to television and began a feud with none other than the Iron Sheik. And if anybody follows pro wrestling for any amount of time, you know that the Iron Sheik did not like Hulk Hogan. And I mean, I'm putting it mildly. I'm giving it, this is probably the nicest description I can give. The Iron Sheik in his feelings towards Hulk Hogan. God rest his soul. He passed away a couple of years back as well. But my God, if they were to link up in heaven, it's going to be a throwdown. The loser leaves heaven match. I don't know, man. I think Hogan going to hell because it's Iron Sheik got some disdain for. I mean, literally to his dying day. Literally, the day Iron Sheik passed away, he tweeted, "F Hulk Hogan." he don't. He never hid his feelings about Hulk Hogan. But in any event, that was his first initial feud when he pinned the Iron Sheik to become the WWF World Heavyweight Champion. That was it was kind of funky the way it was. Now, it wasn't for all of us watching at home, but behind the scenes, you see, Backlund was supposed to be the Iron Sheik's opponent that night for the title. It didn't go that way. Next thing you know, it was a last minute replacement, and it was none other than Hulk Hogan who won the title. And he became champion by way of being the first man to escape the camel clutch, which was the Iron Sheik's finishing move, and that made it even worse. Because finishing moves are protected. At least they supposed to be. Not so much these days, because my God, man, if I watch another premium live event where we get multiple kickouts of multiple finishing moves, I'm gonna lose my mind because they're no longer finishing moves. I see more, and this is my rant portion of the show. It has nothing to do with Hulk Hogan, but it is. I see more finishes with a surprise roll up than I actually see from a finishing move. It is driving me insane. As a wrestling fan, it drives me insane. The only finishing moves lately that I've seen that have been protected is the RKO, the Riptide, and that's about it. Everything else I have seen get kicked out of. I haven't seen nobody's finisher be devastating. You remember the Razor's Edge from Razor Ramon or Scott Hall? That was protected. Nobody ever kicked out of that. Ever. The Jackknife Powerbomb? Never. The Jackknife suplex from Goldberg? Never. I don't get it, man. I just don't get wrestling these days. But anywho's back to Mr. Hulk Hogan after he won this championship. Gorilla Monsoon, who was on commentary at the time, he made the proclamation, and no truer words have been spoken from the commentary desk on any promotion in history when he uttered the words Hulkamania is here. And boy, was it. That was the birth of Hulkamania, and my God, it took off from there. Hulk Hogan started calling his fans the Hulkamaniacs. That's why I consider myself a Hulkamaniac. Not so much today, but I did back then. This is where we got the motto, the mission statement of Hulkamania, where it's training, say your prayers, and eat your vitamins. All that became the mantra for little boys and girls around that time. And then there's the epic hulking up, baby. That's where the crowd gets energized. Hulk is getting beat down by his opponent, and eventually he stops. He stops selling, and he's shaking his head. He's shaking his arm. Look like he's having a seizure in the ring, and he's slowly standing up. The opponent is still punching him, trying to get him down, and he's hulking up, man. And once he gets to that stage, it's over. It's nothing you can do. You can ram a Mack truck into him, and the Mack truck don't stand a chance. So that was that. And then there's the pointing at him, like, you. And then Then there's 3 punches, an Irish rip, a big boot, and a running leg drop. Match over. That's it. That's the four. That's the moves. That's it. That was it. But for some strange reason, that worked for 35 years or however long it was that he was doing it. It was flawless, man. But professional wrestling took off at this point. They had their poster child, they had their hero, they had their guy they can stand behind to kind of legitimize this sport or whatever you want to describe it as. You had a face that you can put on cereal boxes, a face you can put on toys, a face that you can put on a cartoon, which is what we got. We got I think it was, what was it called, rockin' wrestling or something like that. Yeah, you had that Saturday morning cartoon. You had the first WrestleMania to take place in 1985 where he teamed up with Mr. T, and you're like, oh man. That's cool. That's cool there. You had Saturday night main events and all this other good stuff. You got him on the cover of Sports Illustrated and being on the Tonight Show, and co-hosting Saturday Night Live, and it was phenomenal, man. It took off like a rocket, and Hulk Hogan was the man. He was the man. You got the WrestleMania when he actually picked up Andre the Giant and body slammed him. And at the time, I thought that was the most phenomenal thing on God's green earth. Because I never seen nobody pick up Andre the Giant and body slam him. But as time goes on and you do some research, YouTube exists. You know that Hulk Hogan wasn't the first person to body slam Andre the Giant, but it was epic at the time. It was so epic, and I loved every minute of it because at the time I was geeking out for Hulk Hogan, man. The immovable object going against whatever. I forgot how they promoted it, but anyways, it was a main event that was as big as Andre the Giant. And for him to pick up Andre the Giant, body slam him, do the leg drop, get the win, just an amazing moment in wrestling. And so we fast forward a little bit to another amazing moment, and that was the Mega Powers. And I don't know what's more intriguing about the Mega Powers. Was it these two superstars, arguably the two biggest superstars in their era, with Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man Randy Savage teaming up? I don't know if that was the greatness of it all, or was it the behind the scenes of it all? The Mega Powers exploding that later played out. But if you know the true backstory of what really took place, man, I am surprised that Randy Savage didn't kill Hulk Hogan. Randy Savage did not like him, but they teamed up together. Later they exploded over Miss Elizabeth, because of jealousy, and it come to find out that Macho Man Randy Savage in real life, it was really jealous, real possessive of Miss Elizabeth, and he suspected Hulk Hogan of sleeping with Miss Elizabeth. Now, I don't think this has ever been proven. Nothing I researched that said that this actually took place or not, but it wouldn't shock me if it did, but I can't confirm nor deny if it did. And that led to them exploding outside the ring and inside the ring. And we had an epic showdown between those two. Hulk Hogan ended up winning that match, and I believe that was at the Royal Rumble. That wasn't a WrestleMania. I think that was a Royal Rumble that they end up fighting. Or did they end up? No. They did fight at WrestleMania. I think it started at the Royal Rumble because I think Hogan eliminated Savage or something like that. I can't remember. I just watched a documentary on this. That's not, but I can't remember how that went. But anywho's, they did end up meeting up at WrestleMania, and Hogan beat him again for a second time for the title because Savage was the champion at the time. And so that was that. He ended up finishing out that run with the WWF in 1993. He went back to New Japan Wrestling and did a couple of matches there for about a year. I think he wrestled Muda, if I'm not mistaken. He was all for retiring. He was actually going to retire, and WCW came calling. Then now this is when WCW started to take off. Bischoff became the president of WCW, or the whatever his title was, and he wanted Hogan. He needed a big name to rival the WWF, and that was their goal. Their goal was to take down WWF. That was the whole mission of WCW. So, what would be the knife twisting in the back? Well, not a knife. This is more of a machete, maybe even a chainsaw in the back. It would be their biggest star, the star that made them what they are, to jump over to the rival and make that company just as big. Let's hire Hulk Hogan. So Hulk Hogan was working on his TV show at the time, Thunder in Paradise, which is a horrible show. As big as a Hulk Hogan fan as I was back then, I could not watch that show. That show was bad. But anyway, the decision for him was he wanted to wrestle Ric Flair, something that fans and everybody in the wrestling community around that time wanted to see. Ric Flair was in WCW, and so he decided to go and sign with WCW. I think at one point they were going to link up in WWF, but Vince McMahon didn't pull the trigger with it. So it was a big disappointment for a lot of people, including me, because I was hot as fish grease. That match never took place in WWF. But we get the opportunity to see it in WCW. Hogan signed in 1994, and he appeared with Jimmy Hart as his manager at the time. In his debut match, Hogan won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Are you shocked? When he defeated Ric Flair in a dream match at Bash at the Beach, and that kicked off a feud that saw them link up again at Clash of Champions, where Flair won by countout, which means he didn't win the title. And so they had a rubber match in a steel cage where Ric Flair's career was on the line, and then you had Mr. T as the special guest referee in that match, and of course Hulk Hogan won that match. All this helped WCW, but they didn't quite get there yet. They weren't at the goal they wanted to overtake WWF. So in 1996 at Bash at the Beach, we got a 6-man tag team match. You had the Outsiders, who were Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, who had just defected from WWF and came over to WCW. They took on 4 members of WCW, because the whole angle here was that Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, they were plants. You know, they were sent there by Vince McMahon to ruin the company and blah, 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 blah. And they always said in promos leading up to this match that there's a third man. Who's the third man? And during the match, we see that Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, they get an upper hand. They beating the other team up, and Hogan starts to come out. He comes out down the ring, and you're like, all right, Hogan's gonna fight for the company. he's gonna help WCW out. Randy Savage is on the ground, and you see Hogan hit the ropes and do the leg drop on Randy Savage, and it everybody was like, what happened? What just happened here? What is going on? Did Hall and Nash turn face or something? Because the last thing on anybody's mind is Hulk Hogan turning heel. It's no way. This is no way. And sure enough, for the first time in what 20 years, because he was a heel before he got to WWF. You know, in the early part of his career, he was a heel as Terry the Hulk Boulder and Sterling Golden, whatever his name was. Yeah, he was a heel. It wasn't until Vince McMahon got him and turned him into a face as a baby face to be the face of the company. And so this was like, what? And Hogan dropped a promo that they are the new world order of professional wrestling, the NWO. And it was off and running. WCW took over. 83 weeks. 83 weeks in a row. They were the number one wrestling promotion. And all because of Hulk Hogan, who now goes under Hollywood Hulk Hogan, wearing the black and white, you know, eventually winning the championship, spraying NWO on that belt. And it was just, it was amazing. And you sit back and you think, like I said, I got to keep saying this. No matter how you feel about Hulk Hogan, you can't deny his impact on professional wrestling. He single-handedly, within a 15-year time span, brought two rival wrestling promotions to prominence, to number one. He made WWF what it was, made them the number one promotion in the world, and turned right around WCW, a nothing promotion, a little territorial promotion at one point, and turned them into the number one promotion. He did it. I can't take that away. He did it, because up to that point, WCW was struggling. They were struggling bad. I mean, they were doing all right, but as far as being the number one company, no, they didn't have a shot until Hulk Hogan got there. And so his reign of terror lasted for about 3 years as the NWO did their thing. It was entertaining for a while, and then the bottom fell off when everybody became NWO. It wasn't WCW no more. It was NWO. And it got boring. It got stale. And eventually WWE, as it became around that time, took back the number one spot. One thing that did come out good, one of his better matches in WCW, as far as I can remember, was, of course, the match between Goldberg. When Goldberg won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship on Nitro. That was crazy within his own right, because why Nitro? That is a pay-per-view match in the making. That is money, but they gave it away for free. I'm not mad at him, because I didn't want to spend $50 on the pay-per-view anyway. Thank you, Eric Bischoff. But it was epic, an epic moment for the company. Even in a loss, Hogan still found a way to put the company over. So from that moment on, and I think maybe a year, probably it could have been less than a year after he lost to Goldberg, he kind of reverted back to the babyface Hogan that we know, the real American Hogan that we know, and he kind of finished it off in what that was, 2000. I think the year 2000. That's when we got that Hogan and what's his name, Vince Russo debacle. Once again, that Bash at the Beach. I don't know what it is about Bash at the Beach, but it's always something epic that takes place with Hogan. Either he wins the title, turns heel, or curses out the head of creative on the microphone. One of the two. But that was the very last appearance of Hulk Hogan in WCW, and it is monumental just to say that. But it wasn't that long after that Vince McMahon bought WCW, and that was the last appearance for anybody at WCW. But after his departure from WCW, he did some. It wasn't really wrestling, until 2002, and Vince McMahon brought in He brought in NWO, which was the greatest symbol of Vince McMahon only cares about money, because all three men left WWE on bad terms when they initially left. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, they left under crazy circumstances, and then of course Hulk Hogan, you had the steroid trial that pitted those two guys against each other and all this. I didn't really go into all that because I'm trying to stay positive for this episode, but there's a lot that took place behind the scenes of that that led to Hulk Hogan leaving the WWF the first run. But they came back in 2002. And I'm going to tell you, bro, once again, this is what led up to the Rock match at WrestleMania. Initially, it was supposed to be Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Hollywood Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania. The two biggest stars at the time. Steve Austin declined it. He ended up wrestling Scott Hall at WrestleMania that year. Something to that effect. I forgot who said who didn't want to wrestle who. It depends on who you asked on what day. But it didn't take place. So that morphed into option B, Hollywood Hulk Hogan taking on The Rock. And man, like I said before, despite the fact that Hogan was supposed to be the heel in that match and The Rock came in as the babyface, the crowd turned, bro. The crowd cheered for Hogan so hard. I'm gonna tell you, bro, when I first watched that, I think that was 2002. When I first watched that, I had tears in my eyes because I was thinking back of me as a little boy watching wrestling. And I remember when Hogan, it was this storyline that ran back in the 80s where Hogan was going to retire and all this here, and I was depressed. And they had announced that Hogan was going to speak to everybody on I think it was a Saturday Night Main Event or one of those shows. I think it was Saturday Night Main Event, and he came out and it was somber the way he was talking, and then he said like, "Yes, everybody want to know if I'm gonna retire." Hell no, I'm not. In the way he did, I remember running out and telling my dad, and I had tears in my eyes, just telling my dad, he's not retired. He's still going to wrestle. And that I just thought back to those moments, man. Feel like a fool now knowing that he was a moron, but that's neither here nor there. But it brought back those memories when that crowd turned, because that crowd had the same affection for Hulk Hogan that I had. And it was like, man, somebody feels my pain, even though he's a heel. And I enjoyed him as a heel. He was great as a heel. But who can remember the great say your prayers, eat your vitamins Hulk Hogan, man? That was epic. And that match was epic as well as far as storytelling. That was best story. I'm not saying it was the best technically sound match in wrestling history. No, it wasn't. You look at the two participants there. As much as people love The Rock was not a banger in the ring. He was decent, but he wasn't tearing the roof off of a stadium. So in any event, it was a cool match, and Hogan turned back to face, I should say, and had a nice run for about I don't know what, about a year. When he was there, year and a half maybe. I forgot how long it was. It wasn't long, but he left, did some other endeavors, and he ended up coming back in 2005. And this go around, this this go around, this is when he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. He had his own reality show, Hogan Knows Best, and all that other good stuff. And this is when we had the feud with Shawn Michaels. That it's the stuff of legend, man. This was supposed to be a three-match feud that Hogan turned into one match because he was older and he felt he couldn't go for a three-match arc. And so this angered this angered Shawn Michaels. And so they end up having a match at SummerSlam, which is coming up in a couple of weeks here. And but that year's SummerSlam, where Shawn Michaels oversold every move that Hulk Hogan did to a hilarious effect, man. It was so cartoonish and silly. It's embarrassing, really, but it's funny at the same time. He was that mad at Hogan, but he ended up making them both look like fools, if anything. But uh, nothing really to talk about on this run of his WWE wrestling, I guess you can say, because that was pretty much it. We fast forward to 2009, and this is when he went over to TNA. TNA was trying to be the new WCW and overtake WWF or WWE, and they wanted to make a mark. So let's bring in Hulk. Let's bring in Hogan. Let's see if he can be 3 for 3 here in promotions and make this company a big deal like he did for WWF at the time and WCW. And so Hogan didn't really come to be a wrestler. He really came to be head of creative or whatever, head of the company or co-head or whatever. He brought Bischoff over with him, and it was basically WCW 2.0 when they came over there. They decided to move Impact, which is the name of their flagship show, move that to Monday nights and make it 3 hours to compete directly with Monday Night Raw. And that was a dumpster fire of a decision. It didn't work out at all. The talent he brought in over there at TNA, old washed up WWF and WCW stars that could barely move around the ring. It was it was a dumpster fire. And ultimately, he ended up leaving. Dixie Carter was left wondering what to do with the company. Dixie Carter, of course, was the owner of TNA at the time, and she didn't know what she was doing, and Eric Bischoff and Hogan didn't know what they were doing as well. Wrestlers wrestle. They should not be heads of creative and whatnot. I mean, Triple H, God bless him, he's all right, but he has a team. He has a team with him. This was bad in TNA, and this was around the time I was trying to get into TNA, but it didn't work out. And so, for the fourth time in his career, in 2014, Hulk Hogan returned to WWE, and he made his first in-ring appearance, and he hyped up the WWE Network around that time. He co-hosted WrestleMania. I think that was WrestleMania 30. That was here in New Orleans. The one that Undertaker lost in. That was devastating. He co-hosted that, and you all remember that when he called the Superdome the Silver Dome, and and Steve Austin clowned him for it and whatnot. But yeah, you had that. You it was a lot of appearances. He didn't really wrestle when he came back. He came out at WrestleMania the next year, 31, with NWO. That's when Sting was wrestling Triple H, and a regrettable match. I wish Sting would have went over, but of course Triple H couldn't allow that. But whatever. So you got that, and then the bombshell dropped. The bombshell dropped in 2015. Like, everything that could have went wrong for Hulk Hogan did go wrong when Terry Bollea. This is the Terry Bollea section. He went full racist. Not only that, you had the sex tape leak. You know that came out. Then we got the recordings of him calling his daughter's boyfriend the hard R N-word, the hard R. Now, that rolled off his tongue way too well. You had that. You had the WWE taking him out of the Hall of Fame and stripping him of his Legends contract and whatnot. It was a mess. It was a mess. He was just shamed. He was on the video game, WWE 2K. They took him off the game. It was all, he was just being erased from history. And then something happened. In 2018, he returned for a fifth time to the WWE. They reinstated him into the Hall of Fame. He even got inducted for a second time into the Hall of Fame when the WWE inducted the NWO, the New World Order members, into the Hall of Fame. That was with Nash, Hall, and X-Pac, along with Hogan. He made some appearances on a lot of programs for WWE, but what really kind of held that up a little bit was the pandemic. When that hit in 2020, kind of went missing for a while. Then came back. He co-hosted WrestleMania 37. Appeared on the 30th anniversary of Raw. I think that was one of the anniversaries, whatever. Also at the 40th anniversary as well. And the last time we saw him on WWE television was the debut on Netflix just this past January, when he came out and got booed to death. I mean, he could have passed away that day and I would have known why. It would have been understandable. I mean, I have never heard so much heat come from a crowd when Hulk Hogan's music hit and he limped out limped out the hallway. I was embarrassed for him, but I felt their pain. I felt those people pain, because up to this point, people were just tired of Hulk Hogan. You know, yeah. The political stuff aside, because that's what the majority of the people were booing. It wasn't the racist stuff, because people got over that. But for some strange reason, I don't know how. But the political stuff, you know, him backing Trump and all this here, that just killed it. That was the nail in the coffin for the majority of the wrestling community. And unfortunately, that is the last visual reference we have for Hulk Hogan. It's kind of fitting. It's kind of poetic, to be honest with you, for a man that helped make this business what it was, that created this phenomenon known as professional wrestling. And it's like the saying goes, you can die a hero or live long enough to become the villain. And unfortunately, he lived long enough to become the villain. And I don't know how you view Hulk Hogan. Do you view him as Hulk Hogan, or do you view him as Terry Bollea? I don't know. Me personally, I look at them both individually. I look at them both, I guess, in my psycho mind, they're two different people. Because I don't think Hulk Hogan's a racist. I don't think Hulk Hogan is a moron. But I do think Terry Bollea is. God rest his soul. But I just can't rock with him. But Hulk Hogan, he has given me way too many good memories throughout my childhood and adulthood for me to just say poo poo on him. You know what I'm saying? So I got to give props where props is due. Wish he would have kind of changed his tune a bit, going out the door, admit his wrongs going out the door, because he's also a liar. He if you listen to his interviews, they are migraine inducing. I mean, stuff just don't add up. The math don't be mathing when he talks, some of the stuff he say. But it is what it is, RIP to Terry Hulk Hogan Bollea. I would love to know, what is your favorite Hulk Hogan match? Were you a Hulk Hogan fan? Are you like me? Did he draw you to professional wrestling, and how did you feel, coming up to the end of his life, the last 20 years of Hulk Hogan? Do you feel he tarnished his legacy and whatnot? I'm not going to say he tarnished his legacy. You can't take away the stuff that he did in his career, but you also can't forget the things that he did outside of the ring as well. But I would love to know your thoughts about Hulk Hogan. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Don't forget about YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and smash that like button if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to Faces and Heels here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this remembrance of the legend, the icon, the immortal Hulk Hogan. Until next time, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, and I'll catch you on the next one.